So for me, what it means to be African or have an African identity is being a proud one, a proud person, being proud of who I am and my heritage.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new installment of the Atalaco Effect. This is the part 3 of my discussion with Jonas. On part 1, we talked about Jonas' life growing up in Accra all the way to a business school in the United States of America. Part 2, we talked about Jonas' personal life, so how he met his wife, Bridget, and the birth of his son, what it means for him to be a dad. And now on part 3, we're going to focus it on Africa. So I want to start and kick things right away asking you, Jonas, what does it mean for you to be African?
So for me, what it means to be African or have an African identity is being a proud one, a proud person, being proud of who I am and my heritage. Being African to me means a lot of opportunities and a lot of experiences of others that I can tap into from the African continent. Being African to me means that I have a dream that I know is attainable, a dream that I'm on a journey, on a path, and this path really has no set destination. The destination to me would be wherever the gods of the earth, if I'd put it that way, have destined for me. And at that point, would I know it or not? Perhaps. But till I have the strength to go on, or till I meet my maker, for me, being African is to help others along that journey that I would find myself on.
We often talk about the African culture, and some people get mad in the sense that, oh, we have 54 countries, we shouldn't talk about an African culture because we have 54 different, which of course is true. But I also think that people tend to forget that the divide that exists today were not the case a couple of centuries ago. Right? We were not that divided. So, and I used to be one of those people. I used to be really mad when I was talking to someone and say, where are you from? Say, I'm from Cameroon. Say, oh, I've been to Ghana yesterday. I'm like, okay, good, but how's that? And as I grew up and the idea of being African was more cemented in my mind, I actually kind of embracing that. And I'm going to ask you, you've had the chance and the privilege to travel to a lot of countries in Africa. What are the common traits that you see that Africans share?
So first off, I'd say that Africans are welcoming people. Africans like foreigners. We enjoy hosting foreigners. In Ghana, for instance, most families would always have excess food in their fridge just because there's a saying that you don't know which foreigner will come knocking on your door who would need a place to for shelter, and you would be able to provide the person with food. When I went to Kenya, for instance, it was the same. Very welcoming people, and that experience was no different in Ivory Coast or Senegal, despite the fact that there was that language barrier. I speak English, they speak French, but then that welcoming, that warm relation. Once they knew that, hey, I was from Ghana, they even attempted to say brother, like in English, and say, hey, we are one people. How could we be of service? So common traits that I kind of noticed that cut across board is that hospitality, that welcoming nature of Africans, and that grit, that grind, right? I'm sure most people would wonder how the average, in this case, Ghanaian, gets by, in the sense that wages are not super high. Most people have extended families, which I call the hidden tax. Yeah, aside paying your taxes to the government, you have other responsibilities, and to me, it's very positive that your family doesn't just end between mother, father, and child, but goes beyond to cousins, aunties, and all. In Chino Achebe's book, Things Fall Apart, he says that it is nice for kinsmen to gather around once a while, to eat. And it isn't because they do not have food in their homes. And I'm not quoting verbatim here, but that communal nature, right, is what keeps us together as Africans, and that is something we have in common. If you translate that into events of the world, I'd say that the individuals we idolize now, those that we see to be doing so well, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Bill Gates, the whether Westerners, whether Africans, right? Those people were not made by individuals. Neither are they self-made. It takes a village. It takes a community. It takes that communal effort to mold and bring up such giants. So, for example, the Kwame Nkrumahs of generations before us and the Nelson Mandelas. I don't think it was just Nelson Mandela's mother who brought him up. When Nelson Mandela was playing in the streets and a neighbor saw him being naughty, I'm sure he chastised him. Nelson Mandela being in a school setting was under the care and responsibility of a tutor, of a teacher and of different tutors, right? So that communal aspect of the African culture where we feel responsible for one another, I believe it's so strong and transcends across all of Africa, such that when that one African giant is born, right, there's that expectation of him or her to be able to help transform society, just like Kwame Nkrumah did for Ghana by starting the independence movement of African and the liberation of African countries. He said the independence of Ghana is not complete until the total liberation of the entire African continent. Empowering, setting up schools, bringing in others who would now become heads of states of their countries, the Robert Mugabes and the rest, teaching them, empowering them to go back and liberate their countries. The Nelson Mandelas we've had in time past. Everybody speaks of what an amazing leader he is, and just how much you could learn from him. There are several quotes of Mandela that I sit back and wonder just how wise he was as an individual. But then I believe that it is that communal nature of African living is what brought about such African giants. So as I sit here, I know that I owe a great deal of responsibility back to Ghanaians and the entire African continent at large, that my responsibility doesn't just end here. Once definitely I'm here, I'll build up new skills, I have new strengths, I have several different opportunities. But whatever I do, it's important to remember those back home, right? If it means setting up an educational fund or a system where I can help bright African kids understand the processes and the opportunities available to them here in the US or in other African countries, and how to navigate that and come in here, gain that requisite knowledge and skills, and be able to transform themselves, transform their families, and especially their thought processes, and be able to influence the thought processes of others back home on the continent. I believe I'll feel a great sense of accomplishment being able to do that, if it means that going back home and setting up a business enterprise, where through that enterprise I'm able to change the mindsets of other Africans, I mean, I'll see that as a great sense of accomplishment and as a way of having given back to the society and the community that has helped nurture me to become the person I am now.
I see. That's a perfect segue into our next question. You mentioned responsibility, the idea of having to give back. So when you look at the continent as a whole and the couple of struggles that we go through, what is one problem that you will either like to solve or be part of the solution?
I mean, you say one problem, but then I'd like to mention two very quick ones. The chief issue I think Africans are finding very difficult to comprehend with is leadership. Our understanding of leadership is quite vague, right? Vague in the sense that to most people, leadership, a leader has to do with someone of great strength, someone of great stature, that physical appearance. Leadership, we don't see leadership as being in the heart and in the mind. Sorry. For us, a leader is what? Tall, strong individual, bullish in his talk and all, right? Whereas here in the US, or at least from my experience in working for a multinational company, leadership is a skill that is taught. Your ability to think and process issues and come up with solutions. The importance of teamwork, being able to put in place certain deliberate actions that result in or that give rise to certain expected outcomes. For instance, those are the things I see as good leadership. In the political sphere in Africa, for instance, which is influenced by money, it's more or less a popularity contest as well. People do not really sit down to digest the message being preached by politicians, and also come up with ways of actually analyzing those political statements and promises and seeing whether indeed they are factual and they are attainable.
I think I can challenge that and say that it's not specific to Africa, right? The idea of specifically in politics, if you look at the US right now, either you're talking about Donald Trump or Elizabeth Warren, I would say that most Americans don't have neither the will or the ability to dissect those economic or educational arguments and able to get to that decision and be able to have a vote that you can justify based on the program of the candidate, right? So getting back to your point around leadership, you said one problem then that you see is our idea of definition in leadership. So how would you get to change people either vision or mindset around leadership?
So for me, I believe some aspects of leadership can be taught, right? If we understand that leadership doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the front person or the individual standing in front of a group of individuals and directing them as to how or what to do. But a leader is someone who has the ability to influence others to come around a certain goal or to help achieve a certain goal, right? So you can lead from the back, you can lead from the middle. You can, once you are taught that seed is planted in your head, that is a beginning of a change in that mindset, right? So we should include leadership courses in our educational curriculum from the onset. There are interesting ways of teaching leadership principles, for instance, from, let's say, primary school all the way through to university.
Okay, I want to challenge you on that, Jonas, in the sense that what you're talking, for instance, is changing the curriculum to, from a young age, for instance, get to know what is leadership, right? I'm going to challenge you and say today, at your level, at a very individual level, what do you think you can do to change and transform those ideas into immediate actionable items?
Personally, the influence of, I see social media to be a very strong tool. And you'll find me from time to time making comments or writing blogs and all. So for me, it's a way of influencing others and their opinions, and also help shape that mindset, or provide that alternate way of thinking, for instance. And I believe that is my own way of influencing others to think about leadership in a different way, right? And to the second point, or the second thing that I believe is a challenge in Africa, obviously, is our mindset. Mindset in terms of how we perceive ourselves and how we think about problems. Let me give you an example. We are comfortable being 100% owners of a venture that is worth $10,000, right, than being a 10% owner of an enterprise that is worth $1 million, meaning that our value is what, 100,000. We just don't get that. You know, we still have all of those individualistic qualities with us. It's mine. I want to have it all, right? And those are things that I believe that's something that continues to draw us back. Let's say you start an enterprise in Cameroon, for instance. For most people, it ends there. It's Cameroon, right? They do not see the market for their product or their service beyond Cameroon, right? But if we are able to think, right, in terms of the entire continent, our available market is the whole of Africa. However, I'm going to start in Cameroon to build that expertise and market knowledge, right? And find a way to expand that market. You know, once we start thinking differently in that regard, I believe that we'll begin to make considerable progress. It's going to be baby steps, but we'll now begin to conquer the world just like Western companies have done. When you look at the balance of payment for most countries, and this is delving a little into international finance, right? Most countries on their balance sheets make money from their companies having businesses or their enterprises abroad, right? So how does African countries support their indigenous companies, for instance, increase their presence in other parts of Africa, for instance? Is there that financial incentive? What do we see the Chinese do? Currently, the Chinese are at loggerheads with the US because the US believe that the Chinese engage in unfair practices because the state supports their companies, right? There's nothing wrong with African governments, right, providing some incentives. It can be something as little as tax cuts for companies that are able to have their presence, for instance, outside their parent country. That is a good incentive. And by doing that, not only would you have a company moving from, let's say, Ghana to Nairobi to Cameroon, very soon this company would now want to tap into the markets of Europe and the Americas, right? So for me, the change in that mindset, right, it's important to grow the pie. There's no point having a little pie and eating it all up.
So if I can sum up my understanding of what you say around that mindset, these 2 points. The first point is the investment. That's your example of me owning 100% of 5 instead of 5% of 1 million, for instance. That idea that we are not, interestingly enough, despite our community-based culture, we are not really attuned with the concept of part ownership, either in a business or any type of asset. And the second point is the vision at scale, that we don't, from your point of view, we don't necessarily think big in the sense, I want to create my business, it's going to be in Yaoundé. I don't necessarily foresee conquering the Maghreb or East Africa, which I think is interesting that you think about it. I had a discussion with a friend from Nigeria that I met at UPenn as well, and we thought that looking at the African diaspora, we can have that vision of thinking big. Most of the times, it's an American deformation, positive one, because in the U.S., either through our business school education or just the way American think in general is automatically think at scale, which for Africans, mostly Africans on the ground, there's also an idea of security attached to it, right? In a lot of our culture, the more you expose yourself, the more in danger you are. So sometimes I have conversations with businessmen where they will tell you, I would love to do this and that, or just marketing. Like, why am I not walking around seeing more advertisement of this or that type of company? And they tell you that I would do it. I have to find the budget to do it. But I'm afraid because if I'm a private business, sometimes I like to operate kind of in the dark, in quotes, because the more I expose myself, the more scrutiny I have from the government and the divide between the formal and informal sector. So that barrier not being fluid, some people like to operate into that shadow, if I can put it that way. So it's interesting, the lack of scale. I don't know, the lack of vision at scale. I don't know if it'll really exist or if people limit themselves because of the political and economic situation. So, I mean, we won't have the answer today, but it's an interesting part of view. So you said one of the way that you transform that thought into action is through your social media presence. So let's say I don't know you, Jonas, or I'm in Cameroon and I want to listen or read your thoughts. Is there a Twitter handle or a blog that you think we should visit that you're updating on a frequent basis?
So until recently, with all the issues with Cambridge Analytica and data privacy and all, I've recently deleted my Facebook account.
Okay.
I do not have a Twitter handle either, but I'm on LinkedIn, and my profile is a bit private now because I'm in an interesting phase in my life currently. But yes, I do write on LinkedIn. I do share my thoughts, but it's more guarded on there. Once this phase is over for me, I'm sure that I can make myself public, and everyone would have access to me and what I write and all of that. One thing I've learned being here in the US is to be very deliberate in your actions. So I'm very deliberate in the things I do now. So at the appropriate time, I'm sure that once I make things public again, individuals or whoever wants to follow up with me can certainly do so. But for now, on LinkedIn, once you go onto LinkedIn, I'm there. Jonas Aboagye, you can't miss me. Texas A&M, here in New Jersey, you can easily find me and what I've done professionally. For
I'll
now,
make sure
that is the information I want to be out there about me.
I see. Okay, I'll make sure to share your LinkedIn profile in the description. And for the listeners, just so you know, I'm asking that question to every discussion that I have is to kind of challenge us, again, Africans or friends of Africa, of course, to put our thinking, our actions, our desires, our dreams about Africa into action starting today. I think I had a lot of conversation, or even myself before starting this podcast or everything I'm doing in Africa. I had a lot of thoughts in my head that I either never shared because I thought they were not sophisticated enough, because I thought I was lacking data. There's always something, and I'm sure a lot of you will identify to that, there's always something that we think is preventing us from acting today. We don't have enough knowledge. you want to start a business, but I don't know how to handle finance. So the goal of this podcast and every discussion is as well for all of us to ask ourselves that question: what type of problem do we want to solve? And just start small. Right? Whichever person or company you're following or you take as a role model, they started one day with taking an action, and they were not as big or as skillful as they are today. It just started with putting that thought and that idea into action. So that's why I'm always stressing the what can be done today, not just what type of idea we have. Jonas, I want to end this podcast with a series of short questions that I call the firing round. So quick question, quick answer. What is your favorite African musician? Who?
So there's a Ghanaian musician called Kojo Inchi.
How do you spell it?
Kojo is Kojo.
Kojo.
And Entry is Antwy.
Kojo. Yeah. Okay. Who's your favorite African author?
So I just started reading Chimamanda, but so far I would give it to Ama Ataedu. She's Ghanaian.
Okay. What's your favorite country you've visited in Africa so far?
Besides, Ghana, where I grew up, I would say Senegal. In the capital, Dakar. Even though it was a francophone country, man, I just love the city.
What's the country you would like to go most in Africa that you've never been before?
Madagascar. It's an island country. I think I would enjoy staying on an island.
Tell me about it. What's your favorite African dish?
For me, anything made with rice.
Yeah?
24/7, I'm down.
Do you have one specific, either from Ghana or any other place?
It has to be the Ghana jollof. I know there's a running debate between Ghana and Nigeria, and occasionally you have the Senegalese and the Cameroons pitching, but Ghana jollof is the best. You can't miss it.
For the end, do you speak your local dialect?
Yes. So I speak 2 local dialects because my parents are from 2 different ethnic groups in the country. So I speak my mother's dialect, and I speak the dialect of my dad.
What's the 2 names of the dialect?
So there's Ga. So Ga is spoken by the indigenes of Accra. And then there's Chi. Chi is spoken by the Akan traditional group. So the Akans, you know them as the Ashantis. So if anyone has read on the history of Africa, especially West Africa, you would have come across the Ashanti Empire. So these are warriors from time past and proud people, and it makes me. I'm also proud to be Ashanti, to be Ghanaian, and happy to speak the local dialect too.
Awesome. While you're going to have the opportunity for the end of the podcast, I would like you to say whatever you want. It can be introducing yourself. It can be a message to your listener. But in any of the dialects that you choose, you can take 1 minute or 5 minutes. So you have a free mic.
Tree is more common. Almost everybody wants one way or the other is able to understand it. Medamase Ghana for midin de Jonas Aboagye. And they many madam for Claudel na wa say na ye din kita ho ye din komo about Africa, how senya ye betimi akọ animu ewon nneema ye nkita ho a yedi enso efa ya brabo mu ewo America ha say de yedi free Ghana de ba ha say enso de ye ene nneema ye betimi aye ai yede beboa ye ho ene ye nnuanom a ewo baby free na yewie emfi fie nso enti se motemene a project ya ye be pese ye ne Africa fo bebre ebi di nkomo na nyo otie yen ehun se there's so much I ubetimi aye. Ewo baby out CCA opportunities, and so it's not just in Africa, but we should think big. Opportunities need here, baby, Africa or America or Europe or baby, your dream, say I'm an in a global sense, and have the world in our hands. Madam Wase, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonas. Thank you very much for you listening with us today. I hope you enjoyed those 3 parts, getting to know Jonas a bit better, his life, his profession, his new role in the world being a dad. So, Jonas, again, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate that. Make sure, of course, everyone, as always, if you like what you're hearing, subscribe and share with your friend, colleague, family, or just anyone curious to know more about Africa and Africans and what we do best. I will see you guys next time.